right. Well, before we wrap up on a few more draft questions, I do want to get your thoughts on the Patriots' new head coach, and that is Mike Vrabel, because he was the Tennessee Titans coach for some time. You've obviously been covering the Titans for a while as well, Justin. So, I guess your initial thoughts on the first couple months of the Vrabel era here in Foxborough from what you've seen from afar, but also anything you can tell us about the kind of coach he is. Do you expect him to continue to have success? And maybe even a little insight into like the downfall in Tennessee and why things went awry so fast.
Yeah, I got great stuff to say for Patriots fans because I'm a huge Mike Vrabel fan. I
Cool.
didn't agree with the Titans' decision to let him go at the time, and I think this is a home run hire for the Patriots. He is one of the most unique coaches I've ever had the pleasure of covering. He comes off, he certainly got a hard shell, right? Like he certainly
Hmm.
comes off as a hard ass, if you will. But I think the truly special coaches, they know when to turn it on and when to turn it off. And I think he's got that ability. And I think to the point is that's what makes him unique and is so special. I'll give you an example. I want to say it was AJ Brown very early in his career, and this is not a story you'll probably be familiar with. He fumbled in the middle of a game near the end zone. And I remember thinking, oh, Vrabel's going to chew him out. Like it was just one of those you can't have it
Hmm.
moments, right? And he walks over to the sideline, and you see Vrabel talking to him. And after the game, and I was taken aback because it wasn't what I expected. I got proven wrong. He says, well, it was the exact opposite. He just said, you'll get it back. You'll make a play the next time you get an opportunity. Like he is a hard ass, but his ability to know
He knows his players.
when, yes, to know when to act in the moment, I think really sets him apart and makes him truly, truly special. I don't think you know what you're gonna get with him most of the time. You start thinking you've got him figured out, and you don't, right? And I think
Sure.
that's something that I really appreciated about his coaching style. And look, he doesn't come without his warts. I think you've seen some of it probably online. Like they've signed 73 former Titans this offseason, right?
Yeah.
Like
Very loyal.
uh, yeah, the coaching staff is again like it's essentially the same coaching staff that he had in Tennessee, right? Terrell Williams, who I've got nothing but great things to say, but in an elevated role now as the DC. I think Clint McMillan is there as your D line
Mhm.
coach. That's an elevated role.
Todd Downing's
Jason
here.
Todd Downing, which again probably not a very
Motion.
popular one based on the arrest he had in Tennessee with the
Sure.
alleged DUI. I'm going to say alleged in case his lawyers are watching, but and a couple of the others as well, right? Like you had who else is there? I think Zach Kerr might be there, like a bunch
Zach
of low
Ertz,
level
Yep.
guys
outside
that were low level
linebackers
assistants.
coach.
I
Yeah.
remember them all. Who's
Scott
the
Booker.
yeah, Booker, Scott Booker is there. There's a ton of Jason Hoteling is there as an assistant
Tony
O-line
Deuce.
Yeah.
guy, I think, which
It is
was
the
not
entire Tennessee staff. That's so funny. That's
yeah,
awesome.
like everyone, right? And
Yeah.
it's like some like for example, like I mean some of these guys are now in lower level roles, but like with Jason Hoteling, it was like people didn't feel like he was ready for the O-line job. Vrabel gave him that job. Said it went on, stuck his neck out. Said it was the best interview he had ever conducted with any assistant coach ever. Gave him the
Okay.
O-line coach job. Man, I'm not going to sit here and say it was his fault, but the O line was terrible, right? So when you stick your neck out for an inexperienced guy like that, and then that position doesn't perform, doesn't look great, right? So he's certainly loyal. I mean, Jack Gibbons, I would have bet $4 million on Jack Gibbons ending up in New England when the Titans
I was
didn't
on
tender him.
that. I
Like
was
I mean,
on that.
I mean, it's a no-brainer. He loved him so much, right? And Harold Landry as well. I wrote an article about Landry going there before it happened because days before it was painfully obvious. That was another
Right.
personal favorite of his. So look, there are, in the NFL is a loyalty-based business, right? Like fan bases tend to think, why does it's only my coach that's loyal. I hate this about my coach. No, pretty much all of them are loyal. Mike
Yep.
Vrabel might take it to another level than some of them. I do
We
think he's a
dealt with Bill
fantastic head
Belichick, though,
coach.
who Belichick did the same kind of stuff with
Yeah,
Josh
I mean, and
McDaniels came
listen,
back 3 times, Matt Patricia being
Patricia,
the
yeah.
OC.
and
So,
I'll give you, and fans don't talk about this stuff. I'll give you a great example of a situation that crashed and burned when someone did something that every NFL fan wants. Don't hire out of loyalty, just hire the best man for the job. Okay, that's what Frank Reich did in Carolina. Frank Reich hired do you remember this? He assembled an all-star
A
coaching
super
staff.
staff. Yeah.
Yeah, and he hadn't worked with any of them, right? It doesn't
Hmm.
matter. Hire best for the job. By week 7, or whatever, Frank Reich was fired, and very early on into his tenure, we had stories coming out that they were all backstabbing each other. Because that's when things do not go well,
Hmm.
when you're losing, it takes a lot of moxie, man. When you're losing, to stick by that guy and say, we can get through this together because I trust who's to the left and right of me. Frank Reich didn't have that in
Hmm.
Carolina. Tyler, I saw you raise your eyebrows there. It's not me reporting it. There was a story, I think it was The Athletic, like when Frank Reich got fired, how there was just all this backstabbing going on in the locker room between assistant coaches who did not know each other.
Crazy.
So NFL fans, they love the idea of just hire the best qualified guy. You got to have some rapport with that person. You got to see things the same way. You got to trust that guy. Yes, Vrabel might be one of the extreme examples of that, but I think he's a phenomenal head coach, and I don't think New England could have made a better decision.
Yeah, and we've seen as Patriots followers, like even with Bill Belichick, like he brings in Bill O'Brien, but it's not the role that Bill O'Brien expected, where it's hands off and it's just like let me do my thing. Bill starts micromanaging, and then you did see where the connections that weren't there, some of the hires that didn't gel, they collapsed and they started to like you said, not backstab, but they started creating conflict and getting into
Yep.
arguments. And even last season, there were the parts where like the people that Elliott Wolf brought in, where they had relationships with the Packers and everything. That was like the best part of the offense. And then the defense was this mismatch of different guys that hadn't really worked together before. And again, you saw the defense was kind of a disaster. The corners were good because Pellegrino had been there, but the front completely fell apart. So the loyalty thing, any coach it's going to bite them in the butt, right? At some point, you're going to like a person and not really be able to see the forest through the trees of, he might not be ready for this position. But at the same time, the loyalty. And then I also like you mentioning knowing when to turn it on and off. Belichick did that. I'm sure Vrabel learned it from him. Belichick learned it from Bill Parcells, where it's psychology too. Some guys
Hmm.
you got to chew them out when they mess up. Some guys, little hands off and be like, dude, I'm just gonna give you some loving because I know that you're harder on yourself than I'm ever gonna be on you. It doesn't help for me to just scream in your face. So again, like these things can work for and against you, but hopefully Vrabel's second tenure, now he can kind of iron out some of those details and be a little bit better.
The
Yeah,
that example with AJ Brown is good to hear. I think that Bill was like that, and then sometimes wasn't like that with quarterbacks where he rode Brady until
Wasn't
he couldn't
perfect.
anymore, and then he did it with Mac Jones, and Mac Jones couldn't handle it. So I do like that. I feel as though Vrabel, since he played, he understands the players, but he also understands how to get the most out of his players. So we appreciate the insight on him and looking forward to covering him as well.
yeah, and, from a personnel perspective, of course, to kind of shift the conversation a little bit, but stay on topic.
Yeah.
Of course, the run game was, they thought he was a bit too old school. He was a bruiser, and I think he said it in one of his first media appearances with the Patriots, and it did get some flack where he said, oh, "You run the ball 30 times a game. That's the teams that win." I think sometimes where he struggles to separate that is, yeah, the history indicates teams that run the ball 30 times win, but is it they don't win because they ran the ball 30 times. They run the ball 30 times because they're winning, right?
Clock
Like, I
versus
think there's a bit of,
correlation.
you're running out the clock. Whereas I think sometimes he leans a little too heavily into we got to run the ball because that's the way to win. And you've seen it this year with the receiver. I know the sky's falling there with the lack of receivers, right? Stephon Diggs comes in as a late addition. The contract's a bit bloated. They can get out of it after 1 year, which I think makes it a lot easier to swallow.
Hmm.
But certainly, at times there was, criticisms that not enough emphasis on the passing game. Now he gets a franchise quarterback in Drake May, and he doesn't have a Derrick Henry in that backfield, which
Right.
in Tennessee sometimes I can understand why they leaned on the run game, but there's not Derrick Henry, not prime Derrick Henry there at least, and they've got a quarterback they've got to build around. They've got to make sure that they go out and get some receivers.
And I will
All
say,
right.
one of the
Go.
first
Sorry.
things he did say was, sorry, real quick, but like
You're
to your
good.
point, he said when people asked him about the running, he's like, "Well, I had Derrick Henry, so yeah, we ran the
Yeah,
ball a lot." Like he's pretty self-aware. Where
I
I think, and now he's mentioned like Drake May is the offense, and it seems like he is going to change his approach.
and I was defending that all the time in Tennessee. Titans fans, I would say all the time, look, they've got Derrick Henry, they've got a league average quarterback, and an O line that can't pass protect. So it's like I don't know what you want them to do, but fan bases, nope, they've got to throw it 45 times. I got to see the Patrick Mahomes offense. I said, look, they every time they drop back, they get sacked, right? Something like that. So it's like, yeah, and they've got Derrick Henry. You combine those two things. I do think Vrabel's going to be willing to bend, but I'd like to see him do a bit more at receiver.